Ever since AB Advanced Decoder was released, many of you have been asking me about upscaling, when to upscale, to which order to upscale, how to upscale better, and so I decided that since all these questions are pretty common, I was going to make this video talking about upscaling and all the possible scenarios. Stick with me here because I'm sure that if you have any question about upscaling, I'm gonna answer it here. My name is Alejandro and we are the Audio Brewers. So very briefly, let me explain what upscaling is. Imagine that you have an Ambisonic signal, which is a specific order, let's just say first order Ambisonics. Well, this signal has a very low resolution. So you can upscale this signal to make it have better resolution so that you can have more definition on where the sounds are coming from. Generally, you will upscale this to 7th order Ambisonics, depending on your DAW, and this will give you the best results possible. However, depending on the DAW, depending on your scenario, you might not be able to, or you might not need to upscale. So I'm gonna talk about every single example, and most importantly, I'm gonna answer the question, when to upscale specifically. So first of all, to answer the question in the shortest way possible, when should you upscale your signal? Well, the answer is very easy. As soon as possible. Your signal should be upscaled pretty much as soon as it is a B format Ambisonic signal and you have space to upscale. So it should be the first thing you do. There are two things that you can do before upscaling, and one of them is obviously to transcode your signal from A format to B format in case you are recording an Ambisonic signal from a microphone that records in A format like this one. So of course you're gonna transcode this signal to B format before upscaling. And second of all, another thing that you can do before upscaling is a spatial transformation type of modification, which is rotating your signal. So you can rotate your signal before upscaling it because it's going to be cheaper in the CPU. And anyways, it's not going to alter the upscaling pretty much in any way. So right before upscaling, you're gonna have only to transcode your signal if you need it and transform your signal if it's needed. So to rotate your signal. But then right after, you are going to upscale to the highest order possible. And from then on, you're just going to continue your path. So to answer your question, yes, you should upscale as soon as possible. The first thing you should do is upscale. However, there are some caveats depending on the DAW you're using. So now we're going to talk about more specific examples. So right now we have three types of scenarios where you might need or not need to upscale. First of all, if your DAW supports up to first order Ambisonics, as of today in 2025, first order Ambisonics support only has Logic Pro, so you only have up to first order Ambisonics. Second of all, we're gonna talk about if your DAW supports higher order Ambisonics, but this order is less than 7th. So in 2025, some examples can be DaVinci Resolve that supports up to 5th order, Cubase and Nuendo that support up to 4th order, and Pro Tools Studio, which supports up to 3rd order. And finally, the third scenario is when it comes to DAWs that support any order, including 7th order Ambisonics, which in 2025 is Reaper or Max MSP or Pro Tools Ultimate. All these DAWs support up to 7th order Ambisonics or 64 channel tracks. So these three scenarios are going to require three different types of how to address the signal. So let's address these scenarios. So when your DAW is limited to first order Ambisonics, you pretty much don't have to upscale because there is no possibility of upscaling your signal. So pretty much you're gonna work in first order Ambisonics. However, don't forget that AB Advanced Decoder is going to internally upscale your signal to 7th order Ambisonics before it decodes it. So pretty much in Logic, you're going to insert your signal, work with your signal, insert whatever effect you have, like a reverb or a delay or whatever, and then insert AB Advanced Decoder, and that way AB Advanced Decoder is going to upscale your already modified signal. Is this the best way to work with an Ambisonic signal? Absolutely no, because applying effects to a first order Ambisonic signal is going to give you low resolution results. However, this is a limitation and there is nothing we can do here, and this is how you're going to work in DAWs that are limited to first order Ambisonics. When your DAW supports higher order signals but lower than 7th order Ambisonics, you are going to upscale to the highest order you can as soon as possible. So you have your first order Ambisonic signal, let's just say that you inserted in, I don't know, Nuendo. you are going to upscale this signal to fourth order Ambisonics, which is what Nuendo supports. So you're going to create a fourth order Ambisonics track, you're going to add your first order Ambisonics file, and then the first thing you're going to insert is going to be your upscaler. That way, your signal is going to be fourth order Ambisonics. And now that you have a fourth order Ambisonic signal, you can process it as much as you want. You can add a reverb, you can add a delay, and all these plugins are going to work in fourth order because they're receiving a fourth order signal, right? And then in the panel, you are going to insert AB advanced decoder so that this fourth order signal is upscaled further to seventh order so that you have even more resolution. So basically what you're doing here is upscaling 2 times. You're upscaling to whatever the cap is given by the DAW, which is fourth order in the case of Nuendo, and then you are upscaling internally to seventh order with AB advanced decoder at the output. What happens if you don't upscale the first thing? Well, if you have a first order Ambisonic signal and you add a reverb or you add a delay, everything is going to be working in first order Ambisonics, and then if you add AB advanced decoder at the end, you're going to upscale all this first order Ambisonic signal to seventh order, meaning that the bounces of the delay or the reverberation that you have applied is going to be originally in first order, which is really, really low quality. So upscale to fourth order first, and then upscale to seventh order, and like that you're gonna get your best signal. Of course, if you don't want to insert any effects and all you want is just decode a signal, then you don't have to insert an upscaler at all. You just have to insert AB advanced decoder, and like that you're simply going to upscale your first order Ambisonic signal to seventh and then decode. But then whenever you add an effect, remember that you have to upscale before you add the effect. And finally, you have the examples in which the DAWs support seventh order Ambisonic signal. So pretty much, this is a no-brainer. The first thing you should do is upscale the very first thing, the very first insert to seventh order. After this, whatever you do is going to work in seventh order Ambisonics, which is going to be the best resolution possible. At the end of your chain, if you insert AB advanced decoder and AB advanced decoder sees that there is already a seventh order Ambisonic signal, the upscaler is not going to kick in, meaning that that CPU that was reserved for upscaling is not going to be used, so it's not going to affect your CPU demand. So upscale to seventh order, very first thing, then add any effect that you want to add, and then decode using AB advanced decoder. So pretty much these are the 3 scenarios in which you are going to find yourself, and depending on the scenario that you are in, you're going to follow the instructions I gave you to get the best resolution possible in your sound. TLDR, upscale as soon as possible, upscale to as high as possible, and if you have to upscale again at the very end with AB advanced decoder, upscale again. Always upscale, remember, because upscaling is going to give you the best quality possible. To complement this video, I just wanted to say that whenever you upscale your signal, you're actually not affecting your original signal. So whatever signal you have gotten upscaled is going to be an addition to your original signal, meaning that your original signal is going to still be there. So for example, if you had a first order Ambisonic signal and you upscaled it to, I don't know, fourth order in Nuendo, and then seventh order to decode it with the AB advanced decoder, these upscaled orders that were added to your signal, they are added on top of the first order original signal that you had. So if you were to remove the second to the seventh order, you'll still keep your first order Ambisonic signal. So whenever you scale, whatever you scale, and as many times as you scale as possible, your original signal will always exist in the order in which it was input to the DAW. So don't worry about losing any quality. It's always going to be lossless, the order that you have inserted. The upscaling process comes on top of it. My name is Alejandro, and if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to let them below, and I will do my best to reply to you all. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.